All right, well, let's get started. Again, thank you so much for joining us. My name is Pankaj. I will host the webinar today with some wonderful industry experts. But before we get started, here are a couple of housekeeping things. Thank you again for making the time to join us today. We appreciate it. We absolutely love questions, so please ask as many questions as you might like. You can use the Q&A panel in Zoom to ask questions anytime. We would answer them while we're on the webinar. We will also keep some time towards the end of the webinar to do Q&A. And if there are any questions that we don't get to, we promise we will get back to you one-on-one. So please feel free to ask questions anytime. Also, this recording and this presentation will be distributed afterwards. So, don't worry about taking any kinds of notes. And with that, let's get started. I am delighted today to be joined by several of my friends and industry experts. We are going to be talking today about maximizing redeployment through AI-powered engagement. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Pankaj. I am one of the founders of Sense. Sense was started a little over 5.5 years ago as an engagement platform, and I'll tell you more about the company in my next slide. But please allow me to also welcome Greg, Tom, and Leanne. So Greg, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, that'd be lovely.
Absolutely, thanks, Pankaj. I'm Greg Gearing. I'm a customer experience supervisor at PrideStaff. We have 85 offices across the US and operate in 4 different brands, from a light industrial and office clerical brand to accounting and finance specialty, insurance specialty, as well as pharmacy staffing. What really makes PrideStaff unique is that we operate as a franchise organization. So we're able to see things in a little bit different lens and work with independent business owners across the organization and the country.
Awesome, thank you. Tom, do you want to go next?
Yeah, hi, my name is Tom Harmon. I'm the CEO of Phoenix Med Staff. We are a healthcare staffing company, nurse travel staffing company that operates in a pretty specific niche of the hospital, the cardiac cath lab, interventional radiology, and electrophysiology space. So we dabble in a little bit of allied healthcare as well, because those are kind of team-based, procedure-based environments. And of course, as a lot of healthcare staffing firms we've gotten into a little bit of the COVID stuff, and Sense has been pretty instrumental in that as well.
Thank you so much, Tom. And Leanne?
Hi, I'm Leanne Perez. I'm the systems manager for healthcare support staffing out of Orlando, Florida. We're an allied healthcare staffing firm. We do staff nationally, and similar to Tom, we have been exposed to some COVID business and are getting our feet wet with some travel nursing. So happy to be here.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So just for our audience, what we're going to do today is spend the majority of our time just talking to our panel. This is very much going to be a discussion. So certainly not a ton of slides or, just, sort of boring anecdotes here. But I'm going to quickly walk you through a little bit of a primer on Sense for those of you who are unfamiliar with the company. Like I said, Sense was started a little over 5.5 years ago as the first engagement platform designed specifically for the staffing industry. We've stayed very true to that mission, and we today work with over 400 customers, every single one of which is a staffing company. We also did a lot of heavy lifting right up front in the product, which hopefully some of our panelists today will be able to validate. But we built a lot of features in the product that an enterprise grade company would need. And that proofs in the puddings. We've already worked with 6 of the top 10 staffing companies in the US. These are some of the largest staffing firms that you've heard of, like, Adecco and Kelly and so on and so forth. And we also work with 60 of the top 175 firms. The 175 number comes from staffing industry analysts. These are all companies in the US with over $100 million in revenue. Along this journey, we've raised 3 rounds of funding, about $40 million from Axel, Google, and Avatar. So those are our 3 investors in our Series A, B, and C round along this journey. Now, the Sense platform is hinged on 3 different pillars: growth, retention, and automation. Growth essentially talks about how we can add more dollars to your top line. How can we help you make more placements? How can we give you more candidates in the top of the funnel, essentially increasing your revenue? Retention talks about how do we help you make more money from the product that you already own, which is your consultants. So how do we reduce turnover? How do we reduce attrition? How do we increase redeployment so you can make more money from the folks that you have already going in the system and actually add profitability dollars? And then automation is essentially the science of taking all busy work out of a recruiter's calendar, if you will. So everything that they, that is manual, everything that's prospecting based, everything that keeps them from talking to an actual human being, a customer or a candidate, those are the kind of things that you can automate with Sense. So that's a small primer on Sense. And this is a preamble into why we wanted to talk about redeployment. If you look at a staffing business today, it is completely plagued with inefficiencies. For those of you who are on the call, I hope you would agree with all of this, but today's staffing companies have a really high drop-off rate. So you might start with 100 applicants in the top of your funnel, but by the time you get to somebody who actually gets a placement or actually gets a hire, it might just be one person. So you're actually losing 99% of your pipeline. Then, of course, even the people who come in your pipeline, more than 90% of them would turn over after their assignment. In other words, you will redeploy less than 10% of the people. And even that's being generous. So not only did you spend all this time and energy to get this one hire, 90% of those won't even stay back with your company after the first assignment. Couple that with the fact that in the United States now, it costs over $2,000 for a candidate to get hired. This number is obviously higher in healthcare and IT, where it could be as high as $3,000, and the commercial light industrial space, it could be $1,000 to $1,500. And then essentially to compound all of this, your recruiters are now working with multiple different systems, multiple point solutions, spending time in updating your ATS, spending time in prospecting, and they're spending less and less face time or talk time with actual candidates and customers. So these are some of the big efficiencies in our industry today. But what we particularly want to talk about, is a heavy focus on how you can reduce some of these inefficiencies by focusing on redeployment. So that's where I want to take this to our panel and turn this into a discussion and essentially just, use their wisdom to understand what they have seen from the trenches. These are all real life examples. These are all real life examples on everything that they see in their companies, in their businesses. So Greg, Leanne, Tom, thank you again for joining me. I'm going to fire away a few questions at you if you don't mind. And, in no particular order, I'd love for you to give us your thoughts. So one is, we're obviously here to talk about redeployment today, right? Redeployment is a hotly discussed metric. Every staffing company that I've ever been associated with or worked with worries about it. So let's just start by understanding, why does redeployment matter? Why does it matter to your business? Greg, do you want to go first?
I can.
Or Tom?
Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah, so I'll just jump in real fast. I think that I don't think that you could really put enough of a focus on it. If you consider kind of how much work goes into redeployment and where in the life cycle of a candidate that comes in, I mean, it's probably the highest ROI. If you have somebody that you've fully onboarded, credentialed, placed, you've got them in your payroll system. Letting them go and just having a quick safety net, that could catch, like you said, 10%, a 5% increase in that is almost pure profit to the bottom line. Because when they go to the next assignment, you already have all their files and everything's ready to go. I mean, those are the easiest placements. So, you can't really cast a good enough net to get all the redeployments that you really want. It's just a never-ending challenge.
Yeah, and Tom, to kind of add on what you're saying, obviously for us at Pride Staff, it's there is a huge ROI, and definitely in terms of maximizing our investment and bringing candidates in and our internal staff members. But there's also another avenue that we look at it as well. And for us, redeployment is something that we focus on heavily, because it really comes down to how that then impacts our associate satisfaction. Especially in light industrial, our candidates are really living and breathing and have a very big desire to continue working and always have something consistent. So for us, that redeployment is something that we take very much to heart, and really feel very strongly about, that it's our duty to continue to help them find consistent work, so that they're consistently able to bring paychecks home and provide for their family.
Awesome. Leanne, anything to add?
Oh yeah, just that investment that we make in candidates and redeploying candidates that you've already invested so much time and effort going through that onboarding process, especially in healthcare where there's licensing, credentialing, all these types of, certifications that go into play. Really just having all that ready and then being able to push them through to that next assignment or redeploying them or, extending that assignment even is just, can really save time and, save you, money on having to go through that whole process all over again.
Yeah. Now, the follow-up that I wanted to ask all of you is, I mean, obviously, I think everybody knows and everybody understands that redeployment is super important. It's a core metric. It sort of goes towards candidate experience, so on and so forth. Yet it turns out that in our industry, the redeployment numbers are really low. I mean, in fact, even some of the best run companies that we work with, they have redeployment numbers between 5 to 10%. So why is redeployment so tough? I mean, what makes that hard to kind of get better numbers at?
Yeah, Pankaj, I think for us, it's in what we've experienced. Redeployment is a challenge for a couple of reasons. One, especially in the light industrial space, candidates are using multiple staffing firms as resources. We found typically 5, maybe even 6, up to 10 max different resources in their job search. And so what happens and why we need to be on top of this from a redeployment perspective is a candidate may be coming off of assignment and now they have other options. They have additional recruiters that are reaching out to them. And where we found that issues happen is, when they're kind of out of sight and out of mind. And the best part about leveraging some of this automation is to really be able to continue that drip and continue to follow up with them. Maybe it's after it's kind of off the mind of the recruiter.
No, yeah, I totally echo that. We never want to assume that a candidate's only talking to us because we know that's not the case, right? So those checkpoints are key, whether it be in their pre-deployment, on assignment, or even after they've ended assignment. Just, kind of keeping your staffing firm at top of mind for these candidates is really important and will help your redeployment efforts because, it'd be ideal if they were only talking to us, but we know that's not the case.
Yeah. I mean, so is there a best practice that you guys suggest in terms of, when do you start engaging with people before they come out of an assignment? Because, if they feel like nobody's taking care of them, then they're likely to, go to job boards, go to your competition. So are there some best practices there that you could share?
For us specifically, we base a lot of our checkpoints off of the candidate start date. So we try to do checkpoints, whether that be with, especially between that first 90-day period, we want to make sure we're checking consistently. But if they do go beyond, those 3-month, 6-month assignments, we're trying to make sure at least every 30 days that they're getting something from us, because the recruiter should be, checking in, seeing how their assignments are going. But we always want to make sure we have that safety net where we create those automated checkpoints, whether it be, that reminding them of who we are, but also, giving them something that they can relate to. So we do growth articles a lot midpoint in their assignments, and it has nothing to do with who we are as a company or a brand or a staffing firm. And it's all about how we can help the candidate. So.
Got it. Awesome.
And, I think one other thing that kind of goes with that too is, there's a funny quiet period that starts about 4 weeks after the start date. 4 to 6 weeks, 4 to 7 weeks. It's kind of that quiet period where everybody's kind of figured out what's going on in the assignment, and there's not really many issues that come up. Everybody has really gotten through most of, housing issues or personality conflicts in the first 4 weeks. But, that 4 to 8 week period, something comes up at home, if you lose the communication where, if a candidate all of a sudden had no desire to go to Connecticut anymore, but now, needs to be home next week and, you got to get that. we found that a lot of just kind of normal weekly check-ins of, hey, how are you on a rate of 1 to 10 on a timesheet email each week. Just tell us how you're doing. And then if you flag responses, Monday morning it's, hey, how can I help you? But redeployment is kind of problem solving. It really starts with making sure the communication stays open.
That's awesome. So, I guess hand in hand with that, I mean, what are some of the metrics you're able to track that essentially tells you if your redeployment efforts are going well? Are there any, pitfalls in it? So what kind of data do you look at?
We heavily look at our response rates. So making sure that, anything that we are automating or sending out, we make sure we track those response rates over the first few batches that goes out. And if we see that the response rates, the click rates, open rates are just low, we try to, look at the strategy, change some things up and see what we can do to really get those high consistent response rates. And then we like to survey our candidates with NPS, which Sense just makes so easy. So we quickly realized that when we were engaging and how we were engaging, through those response rates, we saw that our candidates were more engaging with us and more loyal with us when we engaged more than when we didn't. So that's why we heavily relied on those, open rates and response rates.
Got it. Greg, any thoughts there?
Yeah, we have actively measured our response rate for the last handful of years. Really going back to the last 5 years, it became kind of a key metric in our organization and in how we look at that. So what that did is kind of give us that baseline, and we can evaluate things and continue as we are working towards improving it to find new solutions and find new ways to, whether that's internal processes or things that we're doing through automation, compounding those two things together to really focus and drive on that number and get it as high as we physically can.
So, obviously, one of the things we talk about a lot, Greg, is, doing this sort of automation at scale, right? I mean, it's very different to do that for 5 or 10 people or give them a white glove experience, but especially in your environment where you work with thousands of, candidates, associates, placements every month. How are you sort of doing this at scale? I mean, how are you able to do your redeployment efforts across thousands of candidates?
Yeah, it really starts with data and data quality, and obviously, Pankaj, we've had a lot of conversations over the years, and really excited about some of the tools that you guys have developed that allow us to continue to make sure that data is as accurate and relevant as it can be, and that really gives us the power to be able to stay in front of those candidates at all of those key moments through their journey, and really be able to proactively go out to them, source them, present them with new opportunities, and really then leverage that back and make sure that we have conversations and processes built internally to maximize those.
Got it. Any other thoughts? Leanne?
Probably one thing to say is the second question to the challenge of scale is, how do you scale beyond but keep the personal touch? Because that's what every recruiter wants, is they want to make sure that, that automation isn't going to take their job. And so a lot of it is making sure that, automation is a tool and not a replacement at all. So setting up just regular surveys on how people feel, coming off assignments, on reviews, little things on their birthday, you can almost think about it as every text message or email that they have to write twice should be automated. And then any time spent that they are still writing that going forward, it's time spent that they could be delivering a personal phone call. So automation is what frees up people's schedule to do more of the personal time. It's not a replacement at all. It's really an enabler.
Yeah, I really like what you said, because I've always fundamentally believed that redeployment starts literally the first time you place somebody, right at that instant, because people are not going to work with you again just because you reached out to them 15 or 20 days before their assignment finishes. I mean, obviously that is important. You have to reach back out to them in time before they start getting antsy and before they start going, hey, nobody's thinking about me, I got to fend for myself here. Obviously that's important, but if they didn't get a great candidate experience in the 3, 6, 9 months that they were on assignment, they're probably not even thinking of doing a second assignment back with you, even if you are diligent in getting back to them. So to me, redeployment is sort of the tip of the iceberg, but in general, it sort of boils down to what the entire candidate experience looks like. I mean, how was that person onboarded? How often were you talking to them while they were on assignment? And we all know that, assignments can sometimes be a black hole because, hey, this guy's working now, no problem. We don't need to talk to this person anymore. So I'm also curious about getting some of your thoughts on not just redeployment, but talking about, what an end-to-end candidate experience in your organization might look like, and what are some of the best practices that you might be able to share there?
Well, kind of to,
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
oh, sorry. Well, for us,
Go ahead,
we like to let because there is that fear, oh, the automation's gonna take my job, just like what Tom said, but we know that the recruiters are the relationship holders. They're the ones that the candidates know. They know Jeff, they don't know Leanne, so that's where that customization comes really into play with the automation. You want to make sure that those those touch points and everything that you send out to your candidates, we like to make sure that they know it's actually coming from their recruiter. It's always gonna have the recruiter's name, their signature, their texting number. It always brings it back to the recruiter, so that circle of communication is always continuous and looping. It's not some random person just reaching out and they're like, I don't know who this is. It's like, where's my recruiter? So really using customization to enhance all of your messaging.
That's awesome. Greg, I know you have a pretty sort of evolved candidate experience from when somebody first, applies to or hears about Pride Staff to, all the way to them getting redeployed. So can you kind of take us through what the journey of a candidate or an associate looks like?
Yeah, and Pankaj, back to your earlier point, I agree 100%. And there's an aspect of being in front of the candidate at the right time, but you hit the nail on the head that redeployment really, it truly is the conversation around the candidate experience that you're delivering as an organization as a whole. While we may have gotten them an expected result by helping them get a position, as we mentioned earlier, we're not the only one that they're working with. And if we were hard to do business with, or if we had issues with pay, or we just didn't really provide them with a great experience, why should they trouble coming back to us again? And why should they trust us with their job search? So, we really do look at that from an end-to-end perspective, and really have taken a hard look at some of those key moments of truth throughout the entire journey. And our focus is, how do we continue to be in front of them and walk hand in hand with them through all of those key moments of truth? So whether that be things when they first hit our ATS and welcoming them to the organization, whether that be through their first days and making sure that the placements are going correctly and that there's no issues. We, at all of those kind of major points, we make a very deliberate point to be right in front of them and kind of guide them through that entire process, from everything on through applying to all the way in how can we redeploy and staying in touch with our candidates even after they're no longer working with us.
Yeah, and one of the things you said before, which I really liked what you said, was it all starts with data. And I know that's a big part of like what a lot of our customers talk about, which is how do you have clean and hygienic data, right? I mean, first of all, you have to use some sort of automation, hopefully even some sort of AI to get to a point that your data is trustworthy. So would any of you sort of care to share some examples around how do you guys do database automation or just keep your data up to date? I have tons of examples that I can add here as well, but I'd love to sort of learn from you guys on what you do to keep your data, sanitized, if you will.
Yeah, there's a couple. There's so much you can do, really. I mean, there's kind of pedestrian, just kind of house cleaning tools that you can use. If you're, you can either ask the candidate to reply and do write backs, say for a title or something like that. But one thing that's really nice is the database cleanup tool and how you can just make everything consistent and standardize it. It was just throwing out that marketing. One of the things that I saw that was really valuable is if you can provide some kind of insight into the marketplace that they're not getting anywhere else. I'll bring up an example that our competitor does, Springboard Healthcare, where they have a wage survey, that goes out every couple of years. And that provides, everybody opens up that email, everybody responds to that survey, knowing that in 3 months they're going to get a great market feedback of what are the Western region travel rates and what are the Eastern region travel rates. But every single person entered an email and a phone number into that survey, and entered the database. And I think they were picking up 1,000, 2,000 brand new candidates. And these are people that were hospital staff members, that are the cream of the crop, the best that we could recruit. So that's kind of tying it into a value that you can give back to the community and make them want to read that email and read that report. With Sense, what I'm looking at is turning that into just an ongoing, 3-month thing. There's no reason why, we can't use the analytics dashboard that you created for us to quickly turn that kind of data around and provide real time, almost, 3-month, quarterly type feedback. Once Sense does such a great job of organizing the information and the responses to the point where we can then manipulate and use it. So, providing just feedback back to the community for what they're putting in, I think is a pretty valuable lesson.
Thank you.
Yeah, and kind of back to the whole data hygiene piece, I like to think about it from what are all the administrative or clerical tasks that the recruiters either forget or don't like to do, using Sense to really set up those journeys to just make sure it's consistently updating and refreshing your ATS as things are changing to catch anything that maybe that recruiter might have missed. A big thing for us is once a candidate does end an assignment, quickly moving them back to that active status so that recruiters can identify actively searching candidates.
Got it. Greg, I know you're big on data, so I'd love to hear your perspective as well.
Well, I think Leanne and Tom really hit it, in both capacities, right? And making sure that we have that database updated, whether that's mass things, whether that's things that the recruiters and the salespeople don't like to do. I've found in my experience that there's a very different world between a data nerd like myself, who wants ideally every field on the record filled out as full as possible and always want it to be accurate. And then what is reality on a staffing desk. And, kind of back to Tom's point, we really look at those very strategically in fields that not only do we consider kind of critical fields, right? Whether that's we're triggering things off of or that they're critical to our business, but there's also a capacity of if we can help do some of these things in an automated way, we're taking maybe 5-10 minutes out of a recruiter's day and every recruiter in our organization and allowing them to reallocate that time to do more human things, to really have those conversations, to focus on additional revenue generation activities. Maybe it's one more sales call, maybe it's one more recruiting call, maybe it's spending 5 more minutes on the phone with their candidate, building that relationship with them or solving a problem because they don't have all of these records to go clean up or all of these things to go create inside of the ATS. They can be very focused on building that relationship. So there's 2 aspects of it for us. One obviously is to help continue and boost what we're doing from a Sense capacity in the tool, but really on a frontline experience as well, and freeing those candidates up or freeing the recruiters up to have more conversation with our candidates and our clients.
Yeah, and what I was going to add there was, I can't tell you, when we started Sense, I can't tell you the number of customers that we would talk to where they would basically tell us our data is just completely unusable. I was
one of
those. I still remember these examples of a customer we signed up early on where they told us, hey, we have 1,500 contractors, so we brought them on and we sort of had a contract going with them based on 1,500 contractors. And then we got into their database and they had like 4,000 active contractors. And we're like, wait, what happened here? You guys have 4,000 people, not 1,500? We just did this contract 3 days ago. And they were like, no, we have 1,500 because we cut 1,500 paychecks last week. And it turned out 2,500 people in their database did not have an end date. They were essentially live placements for the last 6 years, 5 years, 4 years. I mean, let alone redeploying those people. They weren't even ended in their system, right? Nobody even knew they're finishing, let alone reaching out to them and saying, hey, you're finishing, can we get you another assignment? And so, what Sense does today with database automation and database orchestration is just, it's just like a very clear testament to me on what staffing companies need. Because, today, if one recruiter leaves your company, which is very normal, and this person was maybe working with 300 other candidates, maybe the moment you delete this person's record, maybe those 300 candidates don't have a candidate owner now, or you have to go and fix it manually. But these are all the kind of things that can just be automatically done with database orchestration. So yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more with everything that you guys said, that it really just starts from data. And once you have good data, then you can have a good strategy on how you're going to approach people. And actually, for that matter, and Tom has great examples on that. You might approach different people differently. Here is how you talk to folks in IT versus light industrial, people based in this location versus that location. And Tom, in your case, people who just do very specialized placements, if you will. So listen, I'm going to ask you a question that just came in from the audience. So this is a little bit here from the left field. Somebody's asking, what automation methods do you use to track the reasons for low redeployment? Do you use any numbers to see how many candidates you're losing to other staffing companies or to direct full-time opportunities, etc.? So I'll throw it out at you guys. Didn't know if any of you has any thoughts on that.
I'll take a stab at it. So for us, surveying is so important. Whether it be throughout the candidate's journey, in the beginning, the middle, or the end, you need to survey them. You just need to see how they're feeling with their assignment. And if we start to see, like, say we have like a large class of pharmacy techs or nurses starting at a specific site, if we start to see inconsistent low numbers or flagged responses coming from that group, that makes us think, okay, what can be going on here? And we really do our best to always make sure we're looping in the recruiter to all those responses, but also the sales team, because whether those low responses could be tied to their experience on their site. It could be, poor training, poor working conditions. And we just want to make sure that we are keeping an eye on all that stuff, because if they're having a poor experience on the assignment that they're currently on, they're less likely to want to go to another assignment through us, and are probably talking to another recruiter at another staffing firm. So probably, just making sure you're keeping an eye on those flagged responses and using keywords to flag your responses also, because that will really allow you to see how the candidate's feeling about that current assignment.
Yeah. And Leon, could you just, for our audience, just tell us a little bit more about what flagged keywords and flagged responses are and how they work? I think that would be super interesting.
Yeah. So you could use the basic ones like bad, not good, not happy, unhappy, terrible, just think about, you see the responses you're getting in. So think about ones that tend to stand out. We, always try to make sure we're including like bad conditions, bad training, poor management, low pay, things like that. Or just so you can, as those survey responses come in, it will kind of highlight it for you in your Sense analytics, like, hey, these are one of your flagged words, and it's going to mark it as a flagged response. Whether they gave you a 7 or an 8 or a 9 or a 10, they gave you a high rating, but they used a flagged word. So that's going to let you know it's a flagged response that you kind of need to follow up on. And that happens to us too. Sometimes the candidates are happy with their assignment. They had a great first week, but they might have said, hey, the training was kind of terrible. And then that's how we know to kind of have those conversations with our hiring managers and give that feedback.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to add that over the last year, a lot of our customers, also added several COVID and coronavirus related keywords to flagged keywords, just like flu, fever, COVID-19, whatever. So, you could immediately catch it, in case you need to refer somebody back to a hospital or do contact tracing, so on and so forth, whatever the case might be. So, the one other thing in response to the question that someone asked, I was going to add was, I think one very important but often overlooked tool is simply exit interviews. You can literally do an exit interview. You can certainly automate that using Sense, no questions asked. You can do that with 100% of the people who are leaving your company. But it might be super easy for you to ask them, hey, where are you headed to next? Are you headed to a full-time opportunity? Are you headed to another contract opportunity? Was it something in our company that drove you away? I mean, the more honestly you ask these questions, the more honestly I think people will respond. But to your question, you can easily track what people are going to be doing. So, so anyway, the other part that I wanted to sort of touch upon was, just this idea of building relevant communication. So, you're going to be talking to folks, you're obviously reaching out to them, so on and so forth, but how are you sending the right message at the right time? What's your communication strategy? Does your marketing team gets involved with that? I mean, are you doing that with your business unit leaders or account managers? But how are you essentially doing that?
So one way that we do it is we kind of go with the social crowding approach. Traveling nurses, there are so many just disaster stories that are out there. They got somewhere and there was a bad manager, or there wasn't even a manager sometimes, and they just left the day before. And the people want out. And I think one of the biggest things that sometimes overlooked is that person doesn't want the next person that's stepping into their shoes to go through the same thing. They're not necessarily like, okay, hey, here's a trap door, here's the next person, now I can leave. They want to be able to give that feedback. So one of kind of the redeployment kind of automation things that we do is, just like you were saying, Pankaj, of exit along the line of exit interviews, is we actually have some of that information right back into our facility descriptions within our APS bullhorn. So questions like, what advice would you give, the next person stepping into your shoes? We actually give that to the next person stepping in or interested in those shoes. In the case of a bad one, we ask them not to step in. But for the most part, they want to be able to pass that information on, and that's the true kind of insider information that will set us apart from another agency that's, hey, this place is great. It's in Santa Monica. It's fantastic. But we're telling them, we just had 2 people there, and there's an awful doctor there. He screams and shouts, and she left crying 3 out of 4 days a week. And that's where our value comes in. And you got to source the crowd for it, because they're the insiders.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more with that. We have seen some of our customers, do actual things like, a few days before the assignment, they'll send them a photograph of the building facility, of the building entrance. I mean, they're just making them more and more aware of what you're getting into. And so, these are the candidates who then realize, hey, you really have my best interests at heart. I mean, one of the things that, we've seen Pride staff do really well is survey people on day 1 itself. Hey, how's your first day going? Did you show up at your work location yet? Just the idea that, hey, if some people have starting trouble, right? I mean, if you can get them to a job, if they can work for a day, they're likely going to show up the next day and finish their assignment. So if you're more engaged with them on day 1, they're probably going to get through the entire end of the assignment as well.
Yeah, and Pankaj, you mentioned that, and that is something that's very near and dear to us, and obviously from a business perspective and a candidate experience side, gives us the opportunity to be in front of the candidate at a very critical moment in their journey. And what we've seen, obviously, in like industrial staffing is that first day is pivotal to whether or not they're going to continue to go back. And so that for us becomes a way for us to manage the no call, no show rate to the next day. And a little bit different environment than what you're explaining, Tom, where you have candidates flying across the country to do jobs and stay, where our candidate could have another job offer that takes them down the street. And so for us to be able to be right on top of them, have conversations, understand what's going on, and get that insight, but then kind of this whole same theme, right? There's only so much that you can do in automation, and not every task is built for automation. There are some things that conversations need to have happen on a one-to-one basis, and you need that personal touch and you need that recruiter. So the ability to pass those conversations off and highlight recruiters and get that back in front of them is really key for us.
Okay, so
one thing that you mentioned, Greg, that I thought was kind of important is just, you say, you can't automate everything, but there's a very distinctive difference that I use sometimes, and it helps a lot, especially with gaining trust with my recruiting team, is that touch point doesn't have to go directly to the candidate. I can send it to my internal team first and then send that touch point based off the survey response to then the candidate. Hey, are you okay with this? Hey, does this fit your situation? Is this a bad time to ask for a review when they just got in a fight or something like that? And so automation can be checking and reminding the recruiter to do a personal touch at the same time, without having to give the candidate that kind of automated feel.
Yeah. I was going to say we got 3 other interesting questions from the audience, so I'm going to throw these at you one by one as well. The first question, which is pretty interesting, is what do your organizations do to get accurate projected end dates into your system so you can proactively communicate and work to redeploy your employees with minimal lapse between jobs for them? Greg, I see you smiling. Sounds like you have something to say.
I think this is a pain point probably for all of us. I know it definitely is in the light industrial world, right? You don't always know how long those things are going to last, and I think that gets back to really understanding and leveraging some of those data pieces that you have and how you can update that. And maybe you don't necessarily know what that active end date may be because there's just a lot going on in flux, but you can leverage some ways to make sure that as soon as that comes off of assignment, you are right back in front of them, keeping that data as sanitized as possible.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I can think of a couple of quick automations that would really help. I mean, you can set an audience very simply for any active placement that doesn't have an end date, and email the recruit and set a touch point to email the recruiter to fill it in. I think you also can look at what, if there's not an end date, is it a miscommunication with the client or is it a miscommunication with the candidate? 7 weeks into a deployment for us, into a placement for us, they get an email that says, are you potentially interested in extending? Who's a good person to ask for a performance review? Because we do our joint commission performance reviews through most of it through Sense. What date do you want to send out the review? And so when you, kind of take it and look at it on that sense, I mean, there's so much that you can really just take from it. That's kind of the same thought, but
yeah. So here's another somewhat tricky question. So let's take it head on. How do you change the mindset of your sales force to pull a current contractor from assignment and put them in a new assignment, assuming they have completed the initial duration and are considering quitting or unhappy? Do you guys come across this at all, where somebody's like, I'm going to quit this job, and you just take them and put them someplace else, but you obviously have to convince your salespeople to do that?
Yeah, go ahead, Leanne.
I guess for us, that's where you need to pick up the phone and call your candidate and try to get to the root of the problem. And, if it's situational and something that, can be, have them, placed in another assignment that is better fitting for them, then yes, that step should be taken. But it really depends on, what that feedback is. But call them.
Yeah.
I would say this is a classic automation example of kind of what we were talking about. What automation would have done is 3 weeks or 4 weeks before this, if you have hey, how'd your week go? They would have caught whatever started to get under this guy's saddle, and a week down the road they would be having that personal conversation. So your first conversation, you don't want, hey, I'm quitting tomorrow. That's brutal because you're too late. They've already made travel plans. They're probably on the way to the airport. So you really want to try and just use automation to catch that initial event. One thing that's pretty classic in the nurse staffing world is that the nurse is going to tell somebody about the problems. Okay, it's whether they're going to tell you about it or whether they're going to tell another agency. But they're going to talk. So you really use it to make sure that you keep that kind of contained, and I think you can see your retention statistics go up.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off of that, if you're seeing a consistent group of, candidates or jobs or sites that are having these types of issues, maybe add in another checkpoint. Sometimes that first day checkpoint needs to be followed by end of the first week or, end of the second week, just to make sure that they're still happy and, there's those issues still aren't persisting. Sometimes a first day checkpoint or a 30-day checkpoint doesn't have to be it. You can always add in those extra surveys or temperature checks to kind of go in hand with that first day.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to take this last question that says, what would you consider a benchmark for redeployment percentage metric in the staffing industry? I'll give you my 2 cents for whoever asked that question. I mean, I think nearly 80 to 90% of the customers that we work with, when they started with Sense, their redeployment rates were less than 10%. So, I don't know if I would call that as an industry benchmark. We certainly have come across some companies where they redeploy as much as 40% of their people, but they tend to be specialized. They tend to be kind of companies where those particular jobs and roles are very much in demand and people can just roll off from one assignment to the other. Typically less than 10%. I will give you another example. We work with several large companies, like I mentioned, and this is an example from a company that's a multi-billion-dollar firm in revenue. Their redeployment rates are about 3%. So imagine for every 10,000 placements that they make, only about 300 people will stay back and do a subsequent second assignment, and they'll lose all the other 9,700. So it's super acute because once that starts happening, your recruiters are running on a treadmill. They're literally just replacing the revenue that you're losing, and you're probably not growing in your revenue at all. So anyway, back to our, back to a couple of other questions I had for you. I also wanted to talk a little bit about talent communities, right? So this whole idea of, you're going to put all these best practices in place, but there are also going to be people who you're not able to redeploy. You're going to lose people. The people are going to leave you. How do you sort of stay engaged with them after they do leave you? How do you build sort of a talent community out of those people? I have several thoughts on this as well, but I'm hoping some of you can share your wisdom with us.
Yeah, I know for us, whether they're on assignment with us or not, we like to send out, happy birthday notifications. We send out what we call growth articles, which is just like a little marketing email, but really tailored to the candidate and their own personal growth and their personal development. Because at that point, it's what can we do for that candidate? They're not on assignment with us, but we still want to be top of mind. So letting them know that we care. And really open lines of communication. We use Sense texting a lot to communicate with active contractors or just general contractors in our database. So just keeping that door of communication open and always surveying like, hey, are you currently looking for a new opportunity? Or if they are, great, we move forward. And if they are not, then we update our ATS, So those are some things that we do.
Greg, Tom,
I think when you start to look at kind of passive talent and community talent, you really have to put yourself, go look at your personal email. Which emails do you read? Do you read the Amazon fire sales? Do you read the Macy's fire sales? What draws you to those? Because that's really who you're marketing to. For us, we're in a special lab environment. People are going to look if they want to see the location. Do you scan? Is there anything in Miami? Is there anything that is 3,000, 4,000 a week? So if you put a couple of headline numbers in, the goal is for them to look at the next email and look at the next one. To just you're not trying to make them pick up the phone and start traveling the next day. You want them to open the next one. Maybe they forward the next one to the friend. But you can never forget that there are so many people who just sit there and just watch and read. You will get them, It might take 10 iterations, but you know, that whole passive community, they browse. They browse. And so you just can never forget that.
Yeah, and for us, it's you know, very similar. It's about staying in front of those candidates, right? Really kind of positioning. How do we position ourselves as not just a transaction, right? It's not just about today. It's about how can we help you through your entire career, whether we're working with you today or you next week, because you ended an assignment with us, you ended up at a competitor because they had a job for you that week, and you know, then maybe in 3 weeks we can get you to come back, and having that dedicated experience for them. Obviously, we want them to successfully transition and be hired on by our client. But you know, our goal is to continue to focus on redeployment, staying in front of them, and continue to bring them back into the organization as effectively as we can.
Yeah, and you know, one of the things I was going to add there was we actually try and distinguish between redeployment and reactivation. You know, redeployment is the idea of, hey, as soon as you're finishing up a job, we've got another one for you. Maybe there is a couple of days of lag in between, maybe there's even a couple of weeks of lag in between, but we did get you a new job. But we talk a lot about reactivation as well. You know, 90% of your people, 80% of your people are going to leave you, go someplace else, but you can still put them in nurture campaigns. You can still keep talking to them. You can keep talking to them and nurturing them for weeks, months, years. I can't tell you the number of customers where we have people who come back to the company doing a second assignment or a third assignment, and we find out that the last time that they worked with this company was 6 years ago. So, you know, they're coming back just because, you know, you either stayed in touch and you were essentially had some, you know, mind share with this person, or you were maybe reaching out to them and saying, hey, can you give us a referral? I mean, you know, even though you're not working with our company, we're still thinking about you. We still want your expertise, and we still want to give you a way to make some money. I mean, if you give us a referral, obviously we're going to pay you. So, you know, so there are absolutely completely different strategies you can do. You can put into play for doing redeployment versus reactivation. So anyway, I mean, you know, thank you, Greg, Leanne, Tom, for, you know, all this wonderful insight. Just to sort of bring us home and wrap this conversation, I wanted to essentially just talk about maybe a couple more things that are relevant to the Sense platform. So first of all, it is super easy to automate your redeployment with the Sense platform. You know, we are going to, this is exactly what redeployment is going to look like. You will have a live view of that every single minute, every single day. You can find out how many new placements are you making, as you can see here, versus people that you're redeploying. What's your average length of assignment? How long does it take you to, on an average, redeploy somebody? And in a given month, at a given point of time, how many people are actually doing their first, second, or third assignment with your company? So you essentially can keep seeing the effect and the impact of this over time. In fact, there's a much nicer analytics view within Sense, which looks like this, that actually can give you a very detailed information on your redeployment efforts. So I'll walk you through this for a second. If you stay with me here, you see in the month of December 2019, this company had 3,500 people come out of assignment. And in less than a month, they were able to get 297 of them back on a job. Within a month, or at the 1 month mark, another 292, 94, 84, so on and so forth. We're tracking this over a 1 year period. So over the course of a 1 year period, they were able to redeploy 30% of their 3,567 people who came out in December. The same thing with Jan. How many people came out in Jan, and then how many were you able to redeploy? They obviously haven't reached their month 12 just yet, or at least when we had taken this data snapshot. So, you know, you can actually see your redeployment rate. You can see, you know, if your redeployment rate is going up, going down, how many people are you placing? So there are plenty of these ways where you can start measuring these metrics, and that's how you are going to keep, you're going to improve these metrics. I just got a question that said, where do we find this report? This is very much in the Sense Analytics. So if you click on Analytics here, you can go to a page called Performance, and it'll show you all of your redeployment metrics. And if any of you don't have it, please reach out to your customer success manager, and they will be able to pull this up for you immediately. And then before I go to the last slide, I'll post this another question that came out from the audience. Another tricky question, but you know, that's why we have a team of experts here. But their question is, do your clients get upset because you have started your redeployment efforts And now the hiring manager needs a few more weeks from somebody to finish their assignment.
I'll let you guys take that. That's probably something that happens more in your world than in our light industrial side.
It does, very much so. There is they do get upset, and there's always a balance. We're in a unit where, we to be honest, we don't necessarily look at hospitals as clients. We look at nurses and our candidates as clients. When you have 10 jobs, 15, 20 jobs per candidate, the revenue in the hospital is more of an externality. I mean, you really need to be focusing all your efforts on that. And if you look at that, that's your true client. So we always try to get on our nurses' side first, see what their ideas are, if they want to extend, if they want to go somewhere else. We also do kind of operate through a lot of MSPs. MSPs make it a little bit easier to be impersonal. That unit manager can't really hold a brand grudge against me or anything like that. But it does. But I think when you look at kind of where you want to go and who you're trying to hold on to, do you want the hospital job and you want that guy asking you for the next person that starts Monday, or do you want the nurse that's saying, okay, let's figure out my next assignment because I want to stick with you guys?
Yeah, and I mean, the only thing I would add is, I think it is very much, we now very much live in a world where candidates expect, a white glove treatment and expect a personalized experience. I think you have to put your talent first. I mean, if somebody's working at a client site for 6 months, 9 months, and you started a redeployment effort and, they've got another job and this person needs them for another couple of weeks. Yeah, I mean, sometimes you might have to bite that bullet, but I think for a staffing company, your product is really your talent. And anyway, to wrap this up, this is just a reminder for those of you who do not use Sense today. This is our complete tech stack. We obviously operate again across the entire talent life cycle. What we were talking about today was mainly redeployment and reactivation, which obviously you're able to automate using the Engage product. You can also use the messaging product in Kahoot with that, just to make sure that you can send messages over text if you like. But there are 4 different products that Sense has today: the Engage product, which is an automation product; the messaging product, which is two-way text messaging; chatbot, which is a conversational recruiting assistant; and then referrals that tracks all of your referrals. And with that, I wanted to thank all of our panelists for joining us today and giving us their time and their expertise. Really, really huge thanks to Greg, Leanne, and Tom for being here with us. And thank you to the audience for all these wonderful questions. If there is anything that we did not get to, I promise that we will respond to you one-on-one. But Greg, Leanne, Tom, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you all.